Hi, my name is Sonia Frazier, and I'm going to present to you the educational philosophy of W.E. Du Bois, entitled The Rise of Black Education. During this presentation, I'll provide a quick introduction of my chosen philosopher, background of cultural context, his philosophy of education, theory to practice, perspectives on diversity, a critical analysis, and implications of his ideas in the current climate of education. So W.E. Du Bois was born in Great Barrington on February 23, 1868. He was a sociologist and historian who was a leader of the movement to raise Black consciousness and win full equality for African Americans. Du Bois was a prominent figure in the evolution of African American citizens in the United States and spokesperson for African American rights. He believed that the only way for African Americans to progress in the U.S. was to gain full citizenship and equal rights through the efforts of an intellectual elite. Du Bois maintained that if African American men pursued continual education and became involved in social change, then it was possible for 1 in 10 of these African American men to be empowered to become leaders in their communities. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln included the 10% plan in his blueprint for Reconstruction, which specified that a Southern state could be readmitted into the Union if and only if 10% of their voters swore loyalty to the Union. After the culmination of the American Civil War in 1865, the United States struggled with rebuilding the South, reintegrating Southern states into the Union, and coping with the new legal status of African Americans. This turbulent time after the Civil War inaugurated the Reconstruction era. During the years after the Civil War, starting in the 1870s, white Americans continued to limit the freedoms of African Americans in the United States. W.E. Du Bois originally believed that the only way to combat this rising climate of racism was through protest and agitation. After conducting empirical research focused on the study of race relations and how it impacted the lives of opportunities of the African American communities, Du Bois realized that racial integration was the key to equality in the United States. During the era of slavery in the United States, many African Americans, whether free or enslaved, were often denied education. Du Bois opposed the industrial education philosophy of Washington and saw more value in self-representation in public sectors and supported education that encouraged Black men and women to emerge into brilliant leaders. He had a firm conviction that African Americans needed a classical education to reach their full potential as leaders rather than an industrial education. Additionally, he believed the public school became a primary place of where the racial privileges of the white world and dehumanizing conditions of the dark world were educated into existence, and the old caste codes were dressed in new Jim Crow clothing. So here's the quote by W.E. Du Bois that sums up his philosophy of education. Feel free to pause the video to read the quote and internalize its value. So W.E. Du Bois' theories really went into practice with the creation of NAACP. This was a committee organized by W. Du Bois and a few other activists that worked to strengthen educational progress of the African American community through civil and social work. Du Bois believed that African Americans should educate themselves in a more liberal tradition like their white counterparts, as this was the best way for them to fully emancipate themselves from slavery. Additionally, he also believed that racial equality can be achieved through the arts. So here's a quote by W. Du Bois that sums up his perspective on diversity. Feel free to pause the video to read the quote and internalize its value. W. Du Bois recognized that there was a distinct difference between the Christian church and the practices of the white Christian. So while the Christian church preached equality, often stating that God does not see color or social class and all are equal in the face of God, the white Christians seldomly practiced equality. Not only did he oppose some of the Christian ideas, he also opposed those of Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey, who advocated for a separate nation for Blacks. More than 120 years later, the remnants of his work are clearly seen, specifically in the increasing number of African American scholars seeking and earning advanced and terminal degrees like myself. He encouraged African Americans to find the beauty in their Blackness and to always continue to work for the betterment of their communities. He was a man of integrity and practiced exactly what he preached. Thank you.